How's it going, everybody? Skinslip's Scavenger Hunt continues with the category A Film You Discovered from Another YouTuber, Forbidden Planet. Today, on the Razman's Reality. That is right, I discovered this film through a raving review from about both Skinslips and myself, Zarin Isaac, Sean, who gave it a raving review as a true sci-fi classic. And as I was watching him talk about the film, I was like, I've heard of that film before, but I didn't actually know what it was called. And what I mean is, you hear about references as a film fan and a sci-fi fan in particular, you hear about references to a film that was a large inspiration for Gene Roddenberry in the original Star Trek. You hear about a film that was an inspiration for a lot of modern sci-fi, but you, at least in my case, you kind of just sort of forgot what the name of the film was. But as Sean went on with this review, I realized, hey, this is the film he's talking about. And the thing that really grabbed my attention was this guy on the front, Robbie the Robot, who is one of the most famous robots in all of motion picture history. So I was really excited to check out this film, especially when I found out that it was available on Blu-ray. It had been restored. It was that widely thought of as a classic film. So I put it on my wish list immediately, and then another YouTube friend of mine actually sent it to me from my wish list as a gift. At the time, his channel was different, but now he's known as Angel Tarragon. So thank you to him for sending me this. And then Skinslip came up with this Scavenger Hunt contest, and one of the categories was a film you discovered from another YouTuber. And I was like, well, how am I going to cover that category, because I've already got my recommend series that I've done a few videos on. I've already announced that that series is going to be coming back. So how am I going to do this category? Where am I going to come up with a film that isn't already planned from a direct recommendation that I can talk about? So I looked over my collection, because I didn't want to do everything streaming. I wanted to do, or cable. I wanted to do as much that I physically own that I could. So I started looking around, and I was like, wait a minute. Forbidden Planet's here. You see, I've had this film for almost a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And I had originally intended to not watch it until I did a review. And then I went through a period where I couldn't film at all because my computer just wouldn't handle rendering. So every video I was doing was less frequent, and every video I was doing was direct to YouTube uploads. And somehow or another, this is just a film that fell through the cracks. So I looked around. Actually, it was the other day when I did my Q&A, because I was asked by Mad for Movies how many Blu-rays I owned. So you see stuff on your shelf, but you forget where you put it. You just know that it's in your sci-fi section or whatever. But as you're looking and you're counting your collection, you are reminded of films that you forgot you had. In my case, it's very rare, but here it was a reality, no pun intended, that here was a film that I've just completely forgot to view because I was never able to do the review. So I was like, yes, thank you, Skinslip. Thank you for this category. I finally know that I can check out Forbidden Planet. Like, it's here, it's ready to be watched, and let's go. This film, of course, stars Liam Neeson, Walter Pidgeon, and Anne Francis. Now, this is the only part that is negative about this film. It's the type of film, in order to get across how good it actually is and why it is the classic that it is and has been for so many years, I cannot in good conscience talk about it without talking about the plotline. So if you have not seen this film, I highly recommend that you come and watch this review after you've seen it. If I've intrigued you enough about it being an inspiration for a lot of other films and a lot of other franchises that you love, you can stop watching this video now and come back to this review after you've seen Forbidden Planet. So I'm going to give you a chance to do that right now. Alright, if you're still here, it means you really want to know my thoughts on this film. So, Leslie Nielsen plays a commander who has been ordered by the Federation of Planets. That's right, the first time we ever heard of the Federation of Planets wasn't on Star Trek. It's not the United Federation of Planets, but it is a Federation of Planets, and it was right here in Forbidden Planet in 1956. So, Leslie Nielsen as the commander of the ship, and I apologize, I don't remember the commander's first name. I just saw this for the first time last night and came straight into doing this review while it was fresh in my mind. So I'm going to forget character names, but not what's important in terms of reviewing for the film. So if you're really curious, of course, as always, I will put the full IMDb link down below in the description, as I do for each and every one of my reviews. But anyway, Liam Neeson plays a commander who was ordered to take his crew to the distant planet Altera 4 to check on the well-being of a ship that disappeared there almost 20 years ago, or maybe it was a little over 20 years ago. I believe it was a little over 20 years ago, or maybe it was 30. I can't really remember, but it was a large number that this ship and this crew has never been seen. So the Federation orders the commander and his crew to go and investigate. Well, they get to Altera 4 and they make contact with Dr. Morbius, who quickly informs them that yes, I'm alive, but I'm in no hardship or no distress. There's no reason to land down here. Turn around. If you don't turn around, I cannot be held responsible for the well-being of yourself or your crew. So you immediately know that something is going on here. Nielsen, being the hardcore commander that he is, he says, hey look, Morbius, we've got our orders, we have to land. And so they land, and they learn that Dr. Morbius has happily been living on this planet with a robot he created named Robbie. Yes, that's where Robbie the robot comes in. He's a servant who wouldn't hurt a fly. He will do anything his human masters order him to do, and his daughter. And the reason he's been living for so many years in peace on this planet is because this was the last known place of an alien race called the Corel, who was the most highly advanced alien race ever known to existence. His brain had been enlarged by Corel technology, and he had been given the ability to understand it, and feels as though it's his responsibility to the future of mankind to control this technology and release it over time, because he knows that mankind as of yet isn't responsible to be able to handle it. Well, things start to happen. There are things wrong with the ship, so the commander and his crew can't come back even after they find out, so to speak, that Morbius and his daughter are fine. They can't go back right away, and crewmen start to drop like flies. And the cook gets reprimanded after he is out when the crewman gets killed. Couldn't do anything about it because he had Robbie the robot create gallons of Kentucky bourbon for him, which was by far the funniest scene in the film. So crew members start to drop like flies, and they see no proof of a monster. They only see the footprints. So they go back, they confront Morpheus, who then shows them Krell technology. He shows them a city that's about 70 miles deep in diameter. And he explains that the Krell became extinct because they were a peaceful race who were suddenly attacked by this unknown force. They didn't know where it came from, and that's what wiped them out, because they knew nothing about conflict. So the commander and his crew and Morbius and his daughter, everybody on the planet, begins to think, hey, maybe this monster has come back. Well, time goes on, and they realize that the monster this entire time, and this is why I warned you against spoilers for this review, because this is the most powerful part of this film and why it deserves to be discussed the way that it does, in terms of this is what Hollywood should still be today, and what is definitely missing from the classic era of filmmaking. This whole time it was Morbius, his mind being corrupted slowly over time by not being able to handle the Krell technology. It is his darker alternate self who actually is the monster from the id, which is a terminology used for a monster from your subconscious that had actually killed all of his crew members all those years ago, and also is killing the current crew from the commander. So Morbius' daughter chooses the commander. Morbius is horrified upon learning this. Of course, he sets it up to where the planet and the technology gets destroyed. The ship goes off, and including Morbius' daughter, and that's how the film ends. So there were two things about this film that really jumped out at me and really surprised me in a way that I wasn't expecting. I mean, you know that films don't get to have the term classic put on them without reason, so you knew the film was going to be good. But two things immediately jumped out at me. Number one, for this being a 1956 film, the effects are amazing. When Morbius shows the crew, the commander and his first officer, he wasn't called the first officer, I believe he was called Chief in the movie, but it's basically a first officer. When he shows that 70 miles of Krell City, you really do feel like there's a bottomless end to this ship and this universe that the Krell has created. And it's a triangle door. It was just so inventive for the time. And then when you first see, way back in the beginning, the ship and its crew enter into light speed, what we later know as warp speed, you see where Gene Roddenberry got his inspiration for warp speed and for Star Trek, because the transporter looks exactly like the transporter on NCC 1701, the USS Enterprise. So technology-wise, I was blown away by the imaginative nature of it, and the effects, as I said, I was blown away by, because as the ship is landing, even though the outside of it looks kind of cheap, as it's landing, it's got pretty cool beams coming out the bottom of it. And the monster from the id, this was one of the few times that we'd seen in cinema up to that point where the monster from the id was not a guy in a suit, but rather an actual full-on animation creation. And what they did was they borrowed one of Disney's, MGM is the one who did this film, who was the #1 studio at the time, especially after the success of films like The Wizard of Oz. So they wanted to create the first A-list sci-fi movie, which obviously is something they achieved in doing. But they borrowed one of Disney's top animators, the guy behind Fantasia, and asked him to do the creature from the id, so he hand drew it. And what they did was they actually didn't create any film prints of the monster. They just used the pencil stills that he drew and actually just colorized it and did some effects things with it, and it actually looks really, really effective and pretty darn gruesome and pretty darn whoa. It's one of those things where you really have a hard time believing that this film was done in 1956. So those are the two things that really jumped out at me: technology and effects spectacle. And then the main thing that I took away from this film was the overall message. The idea that mankind perhaps has been and perhaps always will be its own worst enemy. We think we're ready to control things. We think we can handle anything thrown at us. But in the end, with absolute power comes absolute responsibility. To paraphrase Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, I said absolute, he said great, of course. But that's the oldest adage in the book, and it's true. Because humanity is thrust with a great opportunity, and they always mess it up. So for something like that to come out of a 1956 sci-fi movie was pretty impressive, I must say. And it turns out that it was based on a pretty famous story, but just done with a sci-fi twist, which I won't spoil because I want you to have a reason to watch the special features for this film. So overall, this absolutely, out of a 5-star rating, gets a 5-star rating from me. I was blown away by its ability to have romance, suspense, everything that you want from a science fiction film, having only been shot in 1956. There's a reason that Forbidden Planet is such a classic, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you have the opportunity to pick up the Blu-ray or see it by any means possible, please do so. With that, if you're new here and you like what you saw here today, please hit that subscribe button whenever you're on a clickable device, because I would love to see you again. Don't forget to like and share as well, because those always help with views. Don't forget to check out all the cards from this video by hitting that white looking eye in the top right hand corner of your screen. Just hover your mouse around until you'll find it. You'll find the contest video from Skinslip if you'd like to learn all the categories from this contest and enter it yourself before the end of August, as well as your opportunity to become a fan, funder, and or a Patreon supporter of the Razman's reality YouTube program. There's no such thing as a donation too big or too small. Everything I put right back into the show to give you more entertainment value for your viewing pleasure. Join me tomorrow for category number 4, a film or franchise with a killer vehicle. And as always, this is reality according to the Razman, and Razman style is not just a catchphrase, but a way of life.